who's on. Something will tell me who's on it. Okay, good. Greetings. This is the first of perhaps monthly leadership lessons, empowerment, and encouragement that I want to do with those of you that will have signed up. We are excited about the technology that affords us this opportunity to share with you, even though we are not with you personally. And so I'm expecting and excited about our discussion tonight, the risk and rewards of leadership. The outline or some statements that I will talk about has been emailed to you, and I want to give you time to download that and have it before you. Also, you might have a minute or so to invite some others that you think that would benefit from the risk and rewards of leadership. I am Pastor Coach William E. Flippin, which you already know, and I'm a certified transformational life coach, a master coach with the DRC Dream Releaser Coaching, which is with Dr. Samuel Chan. If you are in the Atlanta area and you're interested in learning more about coaching, I want to invite you to a free coaching session all day on this Saturday from 9 to about 4 p.m., 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. Lunch is complimentary. If you cannot stay the entire time, we will understand it. But it will be at Pastor Chris Bowen's church down in Riverdale area. And if you're interested, just send me a note and I'll get the exact information to you. You perhaps can find that information on Dr. Chan's website, mydreamreleaser.com. I welcome you also, while we're waiting for others to come, to look at my personal website, Flippin, F-L-I-P-P-I-N, legacy.com, and you can see some wonderful and exciting things that we are doing in the area of leadership. Also, we have trips planned next year to Egypt and to Israel, and the year after we're going to go back to Greece and do the footsteps of Paul, which I did this year, and it was marvelous with about 35 people. And so if you're interested in taking one of these trips or even sponsoring one, all you have to do is at the appropriate time write a note. Of course, right under my picture here, right under the caption where I'm speaking with you, you can order any of my books that I have written. Some of them I will refer to during the time that we are together. So I'm just excited. I'm thankful for those who have helped me to get to this point and to be able to teach this lesson via this wonderful, wonderful technique. I think it's called webinar. That's what I think it's called. All right. So it's a learning experience for me. I will try to do it maybe every month. And of course, write me. Make sure you're on my mailing list and order my books. All right. So welcome, welcome, welcome. In 1988, I received my doctorate of ministry degree from McCormick Theological Seminary in Chicago. And I did it on leadership, how to empower the pulpit and the pew. And would you believe that from 1985 to 88, when I was studying and doing my research, it is very, very interesting. There were very few church leadership books. There were corporate leadership books, strategies. Very few universities even offered leadership classes, especially on the undergraduate level or even in seminary. And so I found then that was a ground floor opportunity that I wrote and studied and worked on for the leadership dissertation. In my first book, Ordering the Church, there's a lot of things that I mentioned in my dissertation that is in that book. So it was a great, great, great study, a great opportunity. Since that time, of course, the names like John Maxwell and Andy Stanley, Joel Osteen, whether you are a fan, Bishop T.D. Jakes, all those wonderful people that we hear about. The Word Network pastors have leadership books, leadership materials. It's just almost saturated. Of course, the whole idea of becoming a life coach, whatever your niche might be it those that are in pastorate, corporate, or jack of all trades, that's a relatively new industry that has just taken the church by storm. And it has become a billion-dollar industry. So with 36 years of pastoral experience and having been in the church all my life, most of my teaching and lecturing will be from the perspective of the church. But of course, leadership is leadership and people are people. And you can take what we're about to talk about and use it almost in any area of your life. The first thing that I want to talk about, yes, the class handout is there that you can download, and under leadership class handout. So get that, and of course you can take notes on that if you can download it on a piece of paper, or if you even want to do it on the device, you're able to do just that. I have many more things that I could talk about with the risk and rewards, but I do not want to take up too much of your time, and I'm grateful and thankful for you joining this group. I want to first talk about some risk that you take when you say you are a leader or that you're going to lead a group of people. It is lonely to lead. I think Harry Truman said living in the White House was like a prisoner in a five-star hotel, living in a fishbowl, if you will. The higher you go in leadership, I am a witness, it is a lonely place to be. It is lonely. Yes, you know, thousands of people will say, oh, Bill Flippin is my friend. But how many of those people really are your friend? Many times you hear people in church say, Brother Pastor, I'm with you as long as you're right. That would always rub me the wrong way, because I always would say, I'm not going to always be right. And so you're not going to really be a friend to me that I need in good and in bad times. So it is lonely to lead. Leadership involves tough decisions, and you're not going to ever please everybody. And the tougher the decision, the lonelier it can be. Of course, you can ask any questions or have any comments about any of these points, and we'd be delighted to elaborate. Next one, it's dangerous to succeed. It can be very dangerous to succeed. Oh boy, we know of jealous people. Jealous people. I have a pastor friend in Macon, Georgia, when I was a young minister going to his church. He said to me, Flippin, if there's ever a lie told on a pastor, you can trace it back to another pastor. Well, I was naive and young and didn't want to believe that. But I certainly, I've learned that there are people that do not applaud nor celebrate your success. Sometimes the danger of succeeding is immaturity. It's when young leaders experience success too soon. There are some people who, churches are passed on from father to son and or daughter in this day and age, and they were not on the ground floor organizing it. Generally, there are churches that were organized by the father or grandfather. And then they would have a major church, and maybe they're still in college or never did finish seminary or whatever. So it's dangerous because they would ultimately perhaps say, well, look at what I have, look what I've accomplished, and I've not gone to school, so I don't have to go to seminary. Also, complacency. It's dangerous to succeed because when you succeed, you can get comfortable and feel like that you have reached your max, that you've done all. We've just finished almost $4 million worship center and outreach center. And of course, I have to still struggle with the members who are wanting to say, well, hey, we've done the vision, we've built the building. What else do you want? Of course, you all know you have to pay for it, but there's also other work that we must do, because where there's much given, much is required. So immaturity and complacency can be very, very dangerous when you are successful. This is a key point that I really want to mention. The third one, it's harder at home. The risk, it is harder at home. The most difficult place to lead is at home. The most difficult person to lead is self. That is the most difficult person and place, because you're there with them. They see your vulnerabilities. They see sometimes you slip and say a bad word. Sometimes you're angry. You may say things that you regret later, and they see the real you. And of course, some of us are masters at teaching, leading, leadership, and what have you. And we don't listen to it ourselves. We don't follow our own prescription. The foolishness of the gospel is not only for the hearers, but also for the one that is delivering it. And so it's hard to be a leader, the risk at home and also with yourself. It's painful to obey. What do you mean by that? It is painful to obey. You are a leader, and you know what is right, what is wrong. And when you choose to do right, it can be painful. Of course, it's going to be painful if you do wrong, but it can be very painful to obey. Obedience is better than sacrifice. The Lord will direct every leader sometimes to do something that will not be your preference. It won't be something that you want to do. And sometimes your obedience will cost others just as much as it cost you. Just as much as it cost the others. Actually, it's going to cost you more, which I'll talk about before we end this session. And so it's painful to obey. You can't ask people to make commitments or to fast and you not do the same thing. And failure is necessary. Wow, that's a key one. Failure is absolutely necessary if you're going to be a leader, but it is a risk. Some people cannot stand failure. Some people think failure means the end. Dr. Chan, one of his first books was Failure, the Womb to Success. And he interviewed about 15, 20 pastors and told our stories of something that we failed in and what did we learn from it. And so I'm in that book, and several others who are in the Atlanta area, and you ought to add it to your library. But failure is necessary. You learn from your mistakes, and if you don't, you're a fool. Not a failure, you're a fool. You have to learn from your mistakes. And I know being a leader in the Lord's church or anywhere, you're going to make some failures. Attitude is more important than actions. Someone told me that today at a place where I was doing some business. Your attitude, it's even more important than your actions. There are a lot of people that do good actions, but they have a horrible attitude. They have a terrible attitude. And so, do an attitude check. I think I did a sermon on that years ago. Attitude check. Check your attitude. So as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. It's in Proverbs 23:7, something like that it says. And so we do have to look. A bad attitude overshadows good actions. A negative, pessimistic attitude is never good and is never going to help your leadership. It's not going to ever help your leadership. The next point in risk, the risks that you have to take, and I'm welcoming any questions that you have or any statements or if I need to clarify. Giving is the essence of leadership love. Did you hear me? Giving is the essence of leadership love. It is, I've taught here at this church 26 years. It is more blessed to give than to receive. Don't be a leader that you are doing things that people know it's only benefiting you. And we all have seen ministries and places like that where the members are riding the bus, but you're riding a brand new Cadillac. You live in $1 million house and your church is a storefront. I know that's the extreme, but you have to be the first to give. We did a lifestyle stewardship campaign with Generis, and I would admonish you to look that company up. And we raised about $2 million or so to get started on our new building. And he taught us to follow the example of building the temple. And in building the temple, David made his commitment first. It's, in First Chronicles, he made his commitment first. Then the leaders made their commitment and the people followed. No people will ever rise any higher than the leaders. And so leadership means being a lead giver in terms of your time, your talent, and your treasure. You are the lead giver. When we were praying about what we would give in the stewardship campaign, and, you know, I told Dr. Norman what my wife and I had concluded, and to us, it wasn't 50 cents. And he said, oh, no, you have to do more than that, because the perception of your members is that you have money. I said, well, I'm sorry they have that perception. But indeed, we did go back and pray, and the Lord did move on us to give more. And thank the Lord, in 3 years' time, we were able to do just that. God's way is better than my way. How many of you all know that? God's way is better than my way. And God's way generally is harder than the way I would have chosen, because God is interested in building character in me. God's way is harder. When you think you have figured out what God is going to do and how God's going to work, God will give you something else that may be painful, as I said earlier, but it will be harder too. It'll be really, really difficult. Humility is critical for effective leadership to last. Humility. He that humbleth himself. Never forget that there was some discussion going on at the church, and the leaders disagreed with what I was proposing. And afterwards, a person I love, a deacon, said, well, you know, but Pastor, you know, we have to keep you humble. And I immediately said, you will never be able to keep me humble or make me humble. I have to do that myself. He that humbleth himself. And we do see arrogance with successful leadership. But it's critical for you to have an effective leadership to last. One thing that I rejoice about is when people say to me, you know, you're always the same, you're approachable. Take God seriously, but don't take yourself too seriously. Yeah, take God seriously, but don't take yourself too seriously. And once again, I welcome any of your questions, any of your statements that you are wanting to jump in and talk about as we go through the risk. Hear this. People matter to God. People matter to God. We are in the people business. One of the worst things in the world is to see someone who is a leader and they don't like people. And we all have met people like that. We've met leaders like that. People should matter to you. You should do all you can to help them release their potential. You should do everything within your power to help them reach their potential, to reach that which God has created them to be, not what you want them to be. For God so loved the world, people do matter to God. Next, if you need to be needed, you won't be a good leader. You won't last very long. And we all have to struggle through that. Early on, we want people to affirm us, to compliment us, and what have you. That's normal. And we still need that along the way. You don't want to ever be where you don't need people's affirmation, particularly in our culture, the African American church, the hearty amens when you're preaching are affirmations. But if you need to be recognized, if you need to be appreciated, if you need to be accepted by the people, maybe you need to go run for a contest rather than lead, because there are times that you're going to preach and people will just sit and not say a word to you, won't speak, won't shake your hand. Um, on and on I can go. And you have to really, really, as I said earlier, not take yourself so seriously, and to make sure you have somebody in the background always whispered in your ear. You got to remember who you're doing it for. You got to remember whose work this is. You got to remember whose people this are. You know, these are God's people, not my people, not our people. This is not my church. Caesar Clark said it this way: uh, "This is my church by stewardship, but not by ownership. It is my church by stewardship, but not by ownership." Okay. Next, keep checking your motives. Oh, wow. Keep checking your motives. Guard your heart and keep asking, why am I doing this? Why am I doing whatever you're doing in ministry and leadership in the church? Why? And of course, it goes back to people. If it is not reaching people, if it is not reaching their needs, probably doesn't need to be done. It probably does not need to be done. So keep checking your motives always. So many people have hidden agendas, hidden motives. Um, it disturbs me that some pastors, I don't ever hear from them during the year except when it's anniversary time. That's that major thing during their church. And I will say to them, you know, I would love to get a letter sometimes saying that you're having a revival, or you're having a Christian education workshop, or would you invite your choir to participate in a music workshop? You know, I hope you're here, you know. And so people see the glamour of leadership. And they just don't know that you have to check your motives. You have to constantly do that, man. Look at your heart and make sure that you're doing it for the Lord. Here's one, and I'm coming almost to the close of the rest. Watch your tone. Now, my wife was here. She'd probably say amen, because that's one thing she says to me, that, you know, sometimes it's not what you say, it's how you say it. I'm thinking I'm saying it kindly or directly, but I have tried to watch my tone. How you say it is more important than what you say. And sometimes we as leaders have so many overwhelming things going at us that what a person is not understanding or want you to do, you can't snap, because that's not your main thing at that moment. You've got other issues that you deem to be a little more important at the time. But if it's important to someone that you love and you're close to, it ought to be important to you. Lead by example. Leading by example is better than leading by force. Leading by force. No need for dictators if you're a leader. Today I went to a funeral and I was expecting to see the pastor. He was not there because I understand that he is having a terrible bout with cancer, that it had reoccurred and that he has not been able to function normally. And so I called him and encouraged him. And I said to him, "Brother Pastor, sometimes God takes us through to make sure we believe what we've been preaching and teaching." And he says, "That's exactly what I'm trying to do with this illness, is to be an example." He said he's been telling folk to trust in the Lord. The Lord is a healer. Turn it over to Jesus. Well, he has to be that example too. You need to lead by going ahead of your team without leaving them behind. And you to lead by getting behind your team and not letting them lead you. So that's a tricky, tricky thing. So I want to conclude the risk. I think this is the last one. Listen, listen, listen. How many ears do you have? How many mouths do you have? In life coaching, active listening is one of the key elements of being successful. You will be successful if you learn to listen. Sometimes learn what is not being said, as well as what is being said. Leadership is not always about talking and telling others what to do. It is not. It is listening. Sometimes a person says, "I just needed to get that out. I feel so much better. Thank you." And they leave you and you think to yourself, "Now, what in the world did I do?" Except you were a forum. You were an opportunity for them to vent, to share, to weep, and what have you. Well, we've done the risk. So now let's talk about the rewards. Well, I don't have a long list of rewards. It's certainly not that you don't get rewards, but I can almost sum it up in three points. The rewards of leadership. Results. What turns a leader on any better than to see that people are growing, moving, progressing, being enlightened, going to school, reaching their goals? Results. That is a reward. When you see someone that you pastor or sermon you did 2, 3, 4 years ago, and they will tell you what you preached when, and you don't even remember it, but they said that was a life changer for me. I was in Albany, Georgia once, and I was at another church preaching, and in the lobby, there was a young man that came up to me, and I did remember his face at a previous church. He shook my hand and he said, "Oh, you are one of my favorite preachers." And, I was thought to myself, yeah, right, okay. He said, "You really don't believe that, do you?" He said, "Follow me to my car. It's right out here." So as I'm following this man who I don't know, I thought to myself, what in the world are you doing? He said, "Get in the car." And I got in the car like somebody crazy. He turned on his radio, and what was playing but a tape of me preaching that I had preached at that church 4 or 5 years ago. And so, results. That's what makes it worth it. All the crazy meetings and the people not speaking and not giving. Leaders are generally people who desire results. They like to get things done, and they want to be around people who want to achieve and accomplish things. The key is to never take the credit as a leader, but always take the responsibility for failure. I learned that God just taught me that lesson, that we were having a meeting here at the church several years ago and had a member that was a little difficult. They could be a little difficult. I'm not saying he or she, they could be difficult. And they wanted to have a meeting with me and a couple of other people because she had planned to just really rake the other people over the coals because of some things that had not taken place for the success of the program that she was over. And when we sat down and we had prayer, and I said, well, allow me to begin the meeting by first apologizing that perhaps I did not get the information to the leader to write the letter, to make the phone calls. And we dropped the ball. I dropped the ball. I didn't say I dropped the ball. The meeting was over in 15 minutes because I had taken her argument and I had taken the responsibility for the failure. So I hadn't read that anywhere. That just happened. And I'm grateful for that. If you do this, if you learn to take responsibility for failure, you can enjoy the rewards of leadership. You will enjoy the rewards of leadership. So results. The second, respect. Respect. Leadership really boils down to one thing: respect. Dr. Chan once said to a church that he was being a consultant with, and this was the statement: this church loves their pastor, but they don't respect their pastor. Now that was hard, and that pastor thought, well, does that mean that they think I'm in sin or doing something wrong? But it was not till years later I read another one of Dr. Chan's book, and he explained this concept. People may love you as a leader, but when they don't follow you, when they don't know the authority that you have, the calling, they don't respect you. Kind of closely, they don't respect God. And you see that over and over again, particularly in the church, where people want to do what they want to do. They want to vote on everything. They want to cut down everything. They are not respecting the pastoral leadership. They're not respecting that person in that leadership role. We see this with the President of the United States. Who would ever holler at the United States, a president, point their finger? You always respect the position. You respect it. And you make the effort to do what is asked of you. Of course, there are 5 levels of leadership, and I encourage you to Google John Maxwell's 5 levels of leadership. First one is position. Level 1 is position. Level 2 is permission. Level 3 is production. Level 4 is people development. Level 5 is personhood. Now, I went through that very quickly, and if it's something that you want me to come back to next month or at another time, I'd be delighted to go into more detail. I never go to a new church and teach leadership, and I don't do these 5 levels of leadership. You start off as a position, then people give you permission to lead them, then your production. That means you're building churches, or you are putting carpet in the church. People development. That's why I'm on this webinar with you tonight. I'm at level 4. I'm convinced to develop people, to reproduce those that are, and then personhood is the 5th one. And generally, you're an older, elderly person, or you passed away to get to that level. So what are the rewards? Results, respect, and opportunity. What do you mean, Coach Flippin? Faithful leadership awards you with more leadership opportunities. Wow. Faithful leadership will cause a social agency, a governmental agency, to ask you for your advice and or your participation. Because of my involvement with helping some people in the political realm, I just learned that we're going to get a flag. I just asked, is it possible? We'll be getting a flag for our church that is flown over the United States Capitol. Look at that opportunity. I've had the opportunity to shake hands with President Obama. Opportunities that come as a result of faithful leadership. Faithful leadership rewards you with favor and open doors. Favor and open doors. Nobody receives favor unless you are seen. You have to be where people see you. Doesn't mean you're separated from people, that you're not talking to people. Faithful leadership positions you will be seen. So you need to be in the public. Larger church that I have, I don't go to the schools like I used to, but I want to make sure our youth minister, they know that we're here. You want the government to know that you're here. Whole political forums, you have to be seen. And a lot of times pastors don't even live in the same community where their pastor, but you do have to make that presence. Maxwell says that 80% of churches could close tomorrow and no one would miss them. The only time they see anybody is on Sunday morning when church is dismissing. So I pray that people can see, people pass by your church and see cars and they know something is going on. Or pass by your business. First time you pass by business, don't ever see any cars. You're like, I'm not going to go in there and buy food or get hair products. So you have to be seen. Well, this concludes our time. It's been a joy. It's been a cutting edge learning experience for me. I do want to hear from you. I would love to hear from you. Topics that you would like me to discuss. I'd like to hear from you on what you may need more elaboration on. I welcome you to please to get any of my books that are there. If I can come to your church and do leadership or even do it this way, I'll be so happy to do just that. Saturday, if you're in town, please come by the free life coaching session that is being offered by Dream Releaser Coaching. Well, you have a great and a victorious day. For many of you, it's Wednesday and it's about time for Bible study, so I'm praying with you. Allow me to pray with you. God, I'm grateful and thankful for this day to touch and to talk with those that are not in my presence, but yet we're in your presence. So I ask God that you watch over us, strengthen us, and keep us by your will and your way. You're great and greatly to be praised. And so God, give us travel mercies and grace that people would know that we understand the risk and the rewards of leadership. In Christ's name we pray. Amen. See you next month.